Joe Rogan is without question a truly important piece of the UFC puzzle. A jack of many trades, Rogan's podcasting, his comedy, and his work with the UFC have made avoiding his influence damn near impossible. But many fighters aren't so fond of Joe and his place in the MMA world. In fact, there are more than a few UFC stars who have had big issues with him over the years. Here's why UFC fighters hate Joe Rogan. Conor McGregor. Conor McGregor has certainly been staying active on social medias as of late. Between feuding with his old friend and sparring partner Artem Lobov and defending himself against pet allegations, the former two-weight champion has barely stepped away from his phone in recent weeks. One of the standout moments between his recent online rants has without question been his shots at Joe Rogan for his commentary during the UFC 229 main event between him and Khabib Nurmagomedov. In the middle of one of the harder exchanges for the Notorious during the fight, Khabib was easily controlling him on the mat. So what did Conor do? Well, he decided to bend the rules, of course. Instead of working his way out from the bottom normally, McGregor uncorked a massive knee right into the Eagle's face, a clearly illegal shot, and the referee somehow didn't notice. Joe Rogan, however, did notice, making a comment about the strike during the broadcast. To this day, McGregor seemed pretty proud of how he landed that knee, and during a series of tweets praising himself for being that inventive, he mocked Joe Rogan for whining about the knee being illegal.
That's a knee to a grounded opponent. Call the cops.
As you might expect, Rogan never responded to this call out, but hey, Conor calls out so many people these days, it's nearly impossible to keep up. Bryce Mitchell. He have wowed fans with his overwhelming fighting style in recent years, but we're sure even his most diehard fans were left laughing at him after he tried to convince Joe Rogan that the earth was flat. Seriously, Mitchell decided to take shots at the podcast host for being so dismissive to flat earth theory, before then pulling out a basketball and stumbling his way through a geometry lesson in an attempt to prove Rogan and the many other scientists of the world wrong. There's just something about the level of confidence Mitchell has in his theory that is just impossible not to laugh at. He even challenges Rogan to a live debate, telling him that both he and his mama will happily explain the error of his ways to him.
Me and my mama will tell you right now this earth is flat. It ain't moving around at no 600 something thousand miles an hour, spinning 1,000 miles an hour, and floating through the universe.
He then proceeds to tell Joe to get Jamie to research basic geometry on his behalf before he wipes his ass for him. Yeah, he totally went there. At the time of this video's creation, Joe Rogan has not yet taken Mitchell up on his challenge, and I guess I wouldn't hold my breath on it either. Sometimes it can be hard to tell whether he's being serious or not, but UFC middleweight Paulo Costa jumped in with support for Mitchell's flat earth theory. But given that Costa is perhaps the biggest troll in the sport of mixed martial arts today, we're going to take this one with a pinch of salt, just in case. Sean O'Malley. Sean O'Malley always seems to have something to say about UFC commentary, and to his defense, it must be quite difficult to have other people constantly spinning narratives about you without your approval. But when his matchup against Marlon Vera finished the way it did, Sugar Sean was left pretty frustrated by how the fans and the media saw it. O'Malley explained, however, since that fight, analysts in the sport and commentators, specifically Joe Rogan and Daniel Cormier, seem to think that any fighter who finds themselves in there with him should hammer away at his legs for an easy path to victory. Appearing on Cormier's ESPN show DC and RC, Suge explained how this narrative is false and how the injury he suffered against Vera involved more luck than anyone truly realizes.
I don't know why they don't kick his legs like Cheeto Vera did. It was very effective for him. Oh God, it drives me crazy, DC. That's what drives me crazy.
I understand.
The leg
understand.
kick he landed, yes, wasn't a good quality leg kick. My leg kicks I was landing on him were making him spin in circles. His big toe hit the nerve when I was pulling out from a kick. That wasn't it wasn't a very effective kick, but it wasn't the leg kick that you guys are talking about. Just chop his legs down, chop his legs down.
O'Malley just recently made an appearance on the Joe Rogan Experience podcast, so everything appears to be cool between the two. But now in the past, it's pretty clear that Rogan's commentary style doesn't always go down well with the fighters. As for O'Malley, with his name now firmly established within the bantamweight top 5, the time to address all the criticism has finally arrived, and so far it's pretty clear that he's more than up for the task, if his war with the former champion Peter Yan is anything to go by. Brendan Schaub. One name you might not expect to see on this list is Joe's good friend and longtime associate Brendan Schaub. Sure, these guys have had their rocky moments in the past, like Joe when he gave Schaub an almighty douse of love towards the end of his fighting career, basically persuading Big Brown that he's nowhere near good enough to compete at an elite level like the heavyweight division, something that led to Brendan's retirement. But more recently, these two longtime friends locked horns over something quite surprising. After the crazy fight week that saw UFC 279's main card shuffled and switched up just a few hours out from fight night, Schaub took to Twitter to voice his confusion, before wondering out loud whether the whole thing was planned. When Rogan heard about this, he pretty much threw Brendan under the bus, laughing off his conspiracy claims as ridiculous before suggesting that Schaub needed a handler around him at all times to ensure that he didn't make any more stupid comments. It wasn't long until Schaub stuck back, making a lengthy post on his Instagram page. Brendan didn't mention Rogan by name, but he very clearly responded to the claim that he needed a handler, telling the world that he doesn't need a handler and instead perhaps the UFC do, considering that they're sucking up to someone like Mark Zuckerberg. In the end, the feud was a brief one and boiled down to little more than a difference of opinion. Things are going to get crazy in the Octagon this weekend with UFC 282 coming up this Saturday featuring Paddy the Baddy, Jan Blachowicz, and Robbie Lawler. We can all expect fireworks and you don't want to miss it. What's even better is that we've teamed up with DraftKings, the official sports betting partner of the UFC, to share a pretty incredible deal with you guys. Any new customers who sign up using our promo code WATCHMMA and places a $5 bet or more on either fighter to win before the fight starts will get an additional $150 in free bets if your bet wins. That's an additional $150 in free bets if your pre-fight wager of $5 or more on a fighter to win hits. If you want to up the action, you can even combine bets like who's gonna win, how long the fight will last, and more in one parlay to give you a shot at even bigger winnings. If you're in a state where mobile sports betting isn't available yet, DraftKings Daily Fantasy is giving all of you MMA fans a chance to cash out this weekend. DraftKings is safe, secure, and reliable. The best part is you can deposit and withdraw your cash whenever you want. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. New customers who use our promo code WATCHMMA and bet $5 on any UFC 282 fighter to win will get $150 in free bets if your bet wins. That's promo code WATCHMMA only at DraftKings Sportsbook, the official sports betting partner of the UFC. Remember, if you're enjoying our content and want to see more, be sure to leave a like before subscribing to the channel so you don't miss out on any of our weekly uploads. Deiveson Figueiredo. Joe managed to seriously offend the reigning 125-pound champion Deiveson Figueiredo by complaining that the interim flyweight title fight between the former champion Brandon Moreno and the hard-hitting Kai Kara France was pretty much an undisputed championship matchup in his eyes. According to Rogan, the third fight between Deiveson and Moreno was so close that it could have gone either way, which for Joe is enough to make him see Brandon Moreno as a champion of the division. When the reigning flyweight king heard about this, he was just about as annoyed as you would think. Figgy basically had no time for Joe's comments, telling the world that he's going to step into the octagon to look for Joe Rogan's crystal ball, and that he'll eventually make the veteran commentator swallow his words. Fighter bias is something that Rogan is criticized for perhaps more than anything else in his line of work. And in this case, while it's pretty clear that Joe's a big fan of Brandon Moreno, anyone who watched the trilogy fight between these two flyweight greats will know that they're just about as even as a matchup as can be. So yeah, there's no doubt that Deiveson will be extra motivated to prove himself next time around. And with the next Figueiredo versus Moreno just around the corner, he will certainly have his opportunity to do so. Henry Cejudo. Now let's be clear, Henry Cejudo doesn't seem to hate Joe Rogan per se, but he and his old rival Demetrius Johnson were left totally baffled by one hell of a hot take from Rogan during a recent episode of his podcast. In fact, some might argue that this was a pretty disrespectful piece of analysis from the UFC commentator. Speaking to Sean O'Malley, Rogan tried to make a case of Alex Pereira being the greatest combat sports athlete of all time ahead of Henry Cejudo because of the fact that kickboxing features pro athletes and Olympic wrestlers is still technically amateur. Yeah, it's a bit of a reach, right? Well, Henry and the great Demetrius Johnson uploaded the reaction to this clip to Triple C social media, and in it, they couldn't help but burst out laughing when Rogan's point reached a conclusion. Was it Joe's take that was bad? Well, yeah, I guess it kind of was. Cejudo, as an Olympic gold medalist, managed to pull off one of the hardest feats in all of athletics, in a sport wrestling that's considered to be one of the most competitive on the Olympic circuit. Sounds a bit like recency bias, right? Well, as it turned out, virtually no one within the MMA world agreed with Rogan on this one. Poatan is, of course, an incredible athlete who is worthy of the highest praise, but most MMA fans would agree that comparing him to an Olympic gold medalist and a two-weight world champion is a little bit premature at this stage.
Nobody's fighting in glory, he's fighting elite professionals. Yeah, you know, whereas Henry is wrestling amateurs.
Dude, that's crazy. So what do I gotta do? I gotta do WWE to be a pro wrestler? Is that what it is?
TJ Dillashaw. A slightly older entry comes in for the final spot here as the former two-time UFC bantamweight champion TJ Dillashaw voiced yet again another accusation of commentary bias at Joe Rogan after the bout that we saw him lose at 135-pound title to the great Dominic Cruz. At the time, Dillashaw was sitting pretty at the top of the division, but during that time, the presence was felt of the former champ who never lost his belt, Dominic Cruz. When Cruz managed to beat a series of career-threatening injuries to finally claw his way back to the top, the stage was set for an attempt at the greatest comeback in MMA history. And boy, did this fight not disappoint. Cruz showed that he was far from done, outpointing Dillashaw in a classic to win the fight on the scorecards. However, shortly after, the insanely competitive TJ made a lengthy statement on his social media platforms, and in a section of it, he called out Joe Rogan for showing clear bias towards the fellow commentator, advising him to rewatch the fight and get a better sense of what actually happened. In the end, it was a very close fight that could have gone either way, but then again, when has TJ Dillashaw ever taken a defeat well? And that'll just about do it for today's video. What's your own personal take on Joe Rogan and some of the criticism that has been made towards him in recent years? Let us know in the comment section below. Again, if you enjoyed today's video and want to see more, be sure to leave a like before subscribing to the channel so you can stay up to date with all of our latest uploads. Thank you for watching.